I didn't know the desert could feel this quiet. Not the kind of silence you hear, but the kind that watches you. The kind that presses against your skin until your heartbeat sounds louder than your footsteps. The kind of silence that feels like something ancient is breathing behind it. I still remember the first night I felt it. The night stood outside the sealed entrance of Tutankhamun's tomb. The moon was hanging low over the Valley of the Kings, pale and exhausted, as if it had seen too much and didn't want to witness what would come next. My lantern flickered against the cold stone, and the sand shifted under my boots like it was trying to pull me back. Someone once told me that certain places don't like being disturbed that night. I understood what they meant. I didn't go there as an explorer. I didn't go there as a historian. I went because I couldn't ignore the feeling that something in that tomb wanted to be heard, and something else inside it wanted no one to hear it ever again. You're listening to Dreams of History. But tonight, what you hear may not let you sleep, because the story I'm about to tell you is not just about a tomb, not just about a discovery, not even about a king. It's about a pattern of deaths, a line of disappearances, and whispers from the deepest shadows of Egypt that every archaeologist tried to ignore until it was too late. They called it a curse, a superstition, a myth, but I saw enough to know one thing. Whatever was inside that tomb, it didn't want to stay dead, and what happened to those who entered it wasn't an accident, wasn't coincidence, and wasn't something you can explain away with the ordinary. I remember touching the stone door for the first time. It was warm, warmer than it should have been on a cold desert night. As if something behind it was alive, my fingers trembled. Not from fear, from instinct, because deep inside that sealed chamber, hidden under 3,300 years of darkness, something ancient had been waiting, patient, silent, aware. And when the first crack formed in that door, just a thin line of darkness splitting the stone, I felt something move through me like a breath, like a whisper, like a warning. And later, I realized that moment, that tiny crack, was the same moment a chain of deaths began. Quiet, strange, impossible to explain. One by one, the men who entered that tomb simply didn't survive. Illnesses with no symptoms. Accidents that didn't make sense. Sudden collapses. Lost voices. A shadow seen behind someone's shoulder just before they fell. People would say it was coincidence. Bad luck. Desert sickness. But when you've stood where I've stood, when you've heard what I heard inside that tomb, you stop believing in coincidence, you start believing in debt, because what lies inside Tutankhamun's tomb was never meant for the world. Not for our world, at least. The first man to fall wasn't even inside the tomb for more than 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Long enough for a lantern to dim. Long enough for breath to change. Long enough for something ancient to wake up and remember the living. He left the valley laughing that night. By morning, he couldn't breathe. By sunset, he was gone. Doctors said infection. Locals said curse. But I've replayed his last words 100 times, and they don't fit either explanation. Before he died, he whispered, "It followed me out." I didn't understand what he meant then, but I would. Soon, because death wasn't the curse's weapon. Death was just its shadow. The real curse was something else, something that moved in the air behind us, something that touched our shoulders when no one was there, something that waited every time we relit our lanterns in the dark. And once you've stepped inside that tomb, it never stopped watching you, even when you left, even when you went home, even when you thought you escaped, you didn't. Nobody did. And now, I'm going to tell you everything. Every death, every sign, every whisper, every moment the curse reached into the world of the living. But you need to understand something before we continue. What killed them wasn't inside the tomb. it came out with them. And once you know the truth, you may begin to feel it too, that cold breath on your neck, that shadow in the corner, that sense that something ancient, something wrong is leaning in closer, quietly listening as you listen to this story. Because the curse doesn't just follow those who open the tomb. It follows anyone who knows what happened inside it. And you're about to know. Because once you learn what truly happened in that tomb, once the images settle into your mind and the voices of the past begin to echo through the quiet of your room, the curse doesn't stay in Egypt anymore. It travels. It listens. It remembers the ones who dare to remember it. And the moment you begin to understand how the deaths unfolded, you become part of the circle that was never meant to open again. I didn't know that on the first night. All I knew was the way the wind changed when we broke the seal. It wasn't a gust. It wasn't a breeze. It was a breath. A slow, ancient exhale from a world that had been waiting 3 millennia for someone foolish. Enough to disturb its sleep, the lanterns flickered immediately. Not from the draft, there was none. The still air of the Valley of the Kings was like a frozen sea that night. No movement, no life. Even the insects felt absent, as if they sensed what was about to awaken. Howard Carter stood a few feet away from me, squinting at the opening with the hunger of a man who had waited too long, sacrificed too much, and believed he was ready for whatever lay inside. But he wasn't. None of us were. When the stone shifted and the first crack opened, the smell hit us. Not rot, not age. Something metallic, like a long-forgotten memory of blood. And then underneath it a faint sweetness, delicate and wrong. As if the air inside had held on to the last breath of a life taken before its time. Carter raised his candle. The flame thinned, then stretched, as if something invisible inside the chamber was pulling it toward itself. "What do you see?" Someone whispered behind us. Carter didn't answer right away. And when he finally did, his voice sounded too soft, too dazed. "Wonderful things." But I wasn't looking at the treasures. I was looking at the shadows. There were too many of them. Shadows that didn't match our bodies. Shadows that twitched when we were still. Shadows that leaned toward us like curious dead things, learning the shape of the living again. The first man to enter after Carter was named Louis. Tall, confident, always joking. He laughed as he stepped in, boots crunching on ancient dust that had lain untouched since the boy king was sealed away. But the moment his light disappeared inside the chamber, his laughter stopped. We heard a thud, a sharp inhale, a lantern clatter. Then silence. Not the silence of a man exploring, the silence of a man holding his breath. We rushed in after him, hearts pounding, lights shaking. He stood near the golden shrine, frozen, staring at something on the wall that none of us could truly see. His eyes were wide. His mouth was trembling. His hands were cold when I touched them. "Louis," I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't blink. He didn't move until Carter grabbed his shoulder and forced him to step back. When we pulled him out of the tomb, he spoke only once, just once, before the curse took him. His voice was thin, hollow, scraped raw from inside. "There was someone in there," he whispered. "Not alive, not dead. Watching us. He died 3 days later. Doctors said pneumonia. Locals said curse. Carter said coincidence, but none of them saw what I saw that night, the thing Louis was staring at in that tomb. The carved figure on the wall. The one that wasn't there when we returned the next morning. I saw it. I remember it vividly. A tall silhouette etched into the stone, with hollow eyes, and a crack running straight down its skull, mirroring the same crack on Tutankhamun's mask. The very one you see in the thumbnail. That brought you here. A crack that looked like lightning, blue, cold, alive, and it felt like it was looking at me. "Louis," was only the beginning. The curse doesn't kill quickly. It chooses. It follows. It waits until you forget it for a moment, then reminds you that you were never supposed to leave that tomb alive over the next weeks. The deaths continued, quiet, eerie, unnatural. A shadow falling on a tent before a man collapsed. A voice whispering from behind a wall where no one stood. Lanterns dimming only when certain people walked by. A low hum in the night, deep and ancient, like chanting from beneath the earth, and every time someone died. The crack on the mask grew a little deeper in my memory. A line of blue lightning I couldn't forget. They said Tutankhamun died young because someone betrayed him. They said he was buried with rituals never used before or after. They said the priests placed spells around him. That could tear the breath from any intruder. But the truth is darker. The curse didn't start in the tomb. The curse started long before Tutankhamun was buried. It started with the man who prepared the body. The man who sealed the chamber. The man who whispered the final spell that bound something inside a presence that wasn't meant to rest, wasn't meant to leave, wasn't meant to be found. And when we opened the tomb, we didn't release the curse. We released him, the one the Egyptians feared, the one they tried to bury forever, the one who watched us from the shadows of that chamber, and he followed each of us out into the living world. He is the reason they died, and he is the reason I'm telling you this story. Now before he reaches me too, because the curse doesn't strike at random. It strikes in the order of the night you entered, and I was next. And I could feel it long before the others noticed, long before the pattern became clear, long before the desert nights began to change. There are moments in life when you sense something behind you even when you know you're alone. Moments when the air thickens for no reason. Moments when the silence feels smarter than you are. That was the feeling that followed me everywhere after Louis died. It didn't cling like fear. It settled like presence, cold, patient, familiar in a way that made my bones ache. I didn't speak of it at first. Who would believe me? What words could I use to describe a shadow that didn't need light to exist? Or a breath that brushed my neck in a room without wind? Or a set of eyes I could feel even when they weren't there? The curse wasn't a superstition anymore. It had weight. It had rhythm. It had intent. The second death came quietly, almost politely. As though the curse wanted us to understand it could take anyone it wanted at any moment. The man's name was Henry, a photographer. Calm, methodical, brilliant with light. He captured the tomb's first images, the golden shrine, the sealed sarcophagus, the inscriptions around the burial chamber. But there was one picture he never developed, a frame he refused to look at again. He had lifted his camera to photograph the innermost wall, the one behind the statue of Anubis. The flash went off. The light bounced. Henry froze. He lowered the camera slowly, staring at the darkness beyond the statue. There's someone behind it. He whispered. We looked. Nothing. Just stone, carved with ancient vigilance. But Henry didn't sleep that night. He kept turning toward the tent entrance, toward the corners, toward shadows that seemed to thicken only when he looked away. At dawn, he packed his equipment, muttering about needing fresh air. Then stumbled outside. They found him face down in the sand, his camera crushed beneath him. His fingernails broken, as if he had tried to claw his way up from something pulling him down. Doctors wrote, cardiac arrest. Locals whispered, he saw the guardian. I knew better. Because that night, before Henry died, I heard something, while the others slept. I sat alone near the ridge, overlooking the tomb. The cold air wrapped around me like a second skin. The moon hung heavy over the cliffs. And from the darkness behind me, something exhaled, a long, slow breath that didn't belong to the desert or the wind or any living creature. It had depth, age, weight, and then I heard the faintest sound, the soft scrape of stone shifting, of sand sliding under footsteps that weren't footsteps at all. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even dare turn around, because deep inside, somewhere beyond the skin and the fear in the mind, something older whispered, "If you turn, you won't survive the night." The curse wasn't killing at random. It was choosing those who saw it, those who sensed it, those who felt the presence standing just behind their shoulder. Henry saw it in the flash of his camera. Louis saw it on the wall. I felt it breathing. I understood something important that night. The curse was not bound to the tomb. It walked among us. It waited. It followed. And it did not rush. Death was not its purpose. Fear was. The slow unraveling of sanity, the cold grip around the lungs, the whisper that became louder each time one of us tried to forget. By the time the third man fell, even Carter couldn't deny the pattern anymore. Richard the foreman had been careful. He refused to approach the burial chamber alone. He avoided the corners where the shadows pooled. He slept with a lantern burning beside his bed. But it didn't matter. When the curse chooses, precautions don't exist. It was late when it happened. A night without stars. A night that felt stretched thin. Like the sky itself was afraid to breathe. Richard was sitting near the campfire, polishing a tool, talking with the guards, forcing laughter. And then, something pulled his gaze toward the darkness between the tents. He stiffened. The smile drained from his face. His hands froze mid-motion. "What is it?" someone asked. Richard's lips moved, but no sound came. Then he whispered a single word: "Eyes." He dropped the tool, his breath hitched, and he staggered backward as if something unseen pressed against his chest. He gasped once, a sharp, broken inhale, and then collapsed into the sand. His eyes were open, wide, terrified. But he didn't see us. He was staring at something behind us, something none of us dared turn around to look at. That night, nobody spoke above a whisper. The flames from the fire leaned away from the tomb. The desert grew darker than darkness. And I could feel the curse watching us with hunger sharpened by each death. It wasn't enough that they entered the tomb. What mattered was that they were seen by him. The guardian, the presence the priests tried to bind forever. The shadow etched into the wall, crack splitting down its skull, matching the blue lightning streak you've seen in the thumbnail. I couldn't shake the idea that every death wasn't the curse punishing them. It was the curse marking its path, one by one, closer and closer to me, because I had seen something too, not fully, not clearly, but enough. The night after Richard died, I woke to a sound, a soft, dragging noise, like fingertips brushing across stone. I sat up slowly, my breath caught in my throat. The lantern beside me flickered. The canvas of the tent trembled. And for a moment, I saw a silhouette on the wall, tall, still watching, the same shape I saw inside the tomb. And in that moment, I understood the truth. The curse didn't belong to Tutankhamun. The curse was older than him, older than the valley, older than Egypt. It was waiting long before. The boy king was placed in that tomb, and opening the stone door didn't unleash the curse. It freed something that had been starved for centuries, something that remembered every intruder, something that followed, something that killed, not because you entered the tomb, but because you looked into the darkness where it waited. And I had looked, and now there was no turning back. And the worst part wasn't the deaths or the whispers or the cold breath on the back of my neck. The worst part was the realization that every night felt a little less like night, and a little more like a place where something ancient walked freely again. The darkness no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. It felt aware. After Richard's death, Carter tried to regain control of the camp. He forced us back to work, insisted on documenting every inch of the tomb, demanded that we act like rational men. But rationality has a strange way of dissolving when shadows grow too long and silence becomes too intelligent. Even the strongest men began glancing over their shoulders. Even the skeptical ones kept lanterns burning brighter than usual. Even Carter's voice sounded thinner, as if he was talking more to himself than to us. It was on the fifth night that I noticed the footprints. They weren't human. They weren't animal. They were something in between, long, narrow impressions in the sand outside the tomb. As if someone had walked with steps too measured, too perfect, too deliberate, and there was no trail leading to them, only leading away from the tomb, into the camp. After that, none of us slept well. Small things began to vanish. The brushes we used to sweep dust, a lantern here, a chisel there, and once a strip of linen, the kind used in the mummification process, lying neatly folded outside Carter's tent, as if placed there by a careful hand. The curse wasn't just killing. It was communicating or warning. The fourth death came without a sound. Walter, one of the guards, a man built like stone and twice as stubborn, was found sitting against a rock at dawn, staring at the horizon. His eyes were open, his jaw slack, his skin cold, but there were no marks on him, no struggle, no injury. Only one thing was strange. He was gripping a handful of sand so tightly that the grains had cut into his palm, as if he was trying to hold on to something, as if something was trying to pull him away, and carved into the sand beside his boot, just inches away, was the same shape etched on the tomb wall, a tall figure with a crack down its head, the same lightning-shaped line, the same skull-like outline, not carved by us, not carved by tools, carved as if by fingers pressing into the earth one by one. That morning, Carter called us all together. His voice shook for the first time. "No one works alone," he said. "No one enters the tomb at night. And no one speaks of this to the outside world." But the curse didn't care about rules. It didn't care about schedules. It didn't care about daylight or nightfall. It cared about attention, and with each death, more attention shifted toward the tomb, toward the guardian we had disturbed, toward the shadow that no longer needed stone walls to contain it. The fifth death wasn't a man at all. It was a dog. Carter's loyal hound, the one that barked at intruders, the one that sensed danger long before we did. We heard a growl near the cliff, low and rumbling, the kind that comes from an animal that's realized it's not alone. Then a choke, a yelp, sudden silence. We found the dog lying in the sand, its eyes open, staring in the same direction Richard had stared, toward nothing. Despite the fear crawling in our bones, we kept going. We opened the final shrine. We reached the sarcophagus. We saw the mask. Tutankhamun's face, gold, perfect, serene. But the longer I stared at it, the more I felt something wrong beneath the surface. Like perfection was a disguise. Like beauty was a shroud. Like the mask wanted me to look deeper, to see the crack I would only notice later, the one that would haunt me for months. The one that matches the fracture drawn across the thumbnail that led you here. A thin, crooked line, subtle but alive. I remember my fingers trembling as I touched the stone around the sarcophagus. The cold was unnatural. Winter cold, deep cold, death cold. It felt like touching the skin of something that had been waiting too long. One of the workers whispered, "Do you feel that?" I did. We all did. It wasn't temperature. It was presence, as if someone was lying inside the coffin, awake, listening. We lifted the lid, and that's when everything changed. The lanterns dimmed in unison. The air thickened. A sound barely audible slid through the chamber. Not a voice. Not a breath. Something older, deeper, resonant, like the echo of a long-forgotten chant. My chest tightened. My knees weakened. My mind flashed with an image of the silhouette on the wall, and then I saw something move behind the sarcophagus. A shift, a flicker, a shadow pulling itself away from the darkness, rising behind us with a shape too tall, too thin. Too wrong to be human. I blinked, it vanished, but the damage was done. I had looked directly at it, and I knew without anyone telling me that a line had been crossed inside that tomb, a line older than any curse. Older than the boy king, older than the priests who sealed him away. A law had been broken, and once that law was broken, the curse wasn't bound to the tomb anymore, it was bound to us. That night, I didn't sleep at all. None of us did. We sat around the fire in silence, glancing at the shadows, listening for footsteps in the sand, waiting for the next breath of cold air that didn't belong to the desert. The fire burned low. The wind died. The moon hid behind the clouds, and then I heard it, a whisper so close, so intimate, so familiar, that my blood turned to ice. Next, the word wasn't spoken by any man. It wasn't spoken by anything living. It was the same voice Louis had heard, the same voice Henry had felt behind him, the same voice Richard tried to escape, and it was meant for me. My name hanging unspoken in the dark, as if the night itself had leaned forward to whisper it into my ear. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body locked as the cold threaded through my spine, deeper and sharper than anything earthly. The fire beside me hissed softly, shrinking inward as if it, too, was afraid of whatever stood just behind me. I didn't turn around. None of us did, because by then we understood something important. Not turning around was the only thing keeping us alive. When the sun finally rose, pale and nervous over the horizon, we pretended nothing had happened. Men washed their faces with trembling hands. Tools were lifted with stiff fingers. Carter walked with a studied calm that didn't fool anyone. But it didn't matter. Morning didn't stop the curse. Light didn't stop it. Denial didn't stop it by midday. The sixth death happened. His name was Maurice, a quiet man, clever with inscriptions, always gentle with the artifacts. He had been sketching a pattern from the burial chamber, copying the symbols onto paper. I was standing near him when his pencil froze mid-stroke. His breath caught. His eyes fixed on a point on the far wall. Morris. He didn't answer. The pencil rolled from his hand. He stood up slowly, as if pulled by strings, and walked stiffly toward the back of the chamber. His lantern flickered as he moved deeper into the darkness. I followed him, calling his name, but he didn't react. He touched the stone wall, and the moment his fingers brushed the surface, every lantern in the chamber dimmed to a faint glow. Barely alive, I froze. Something moved behind us. A shift in the air. A ripple in the silence. A shape that didn't have a shape. Forming just beyond the reach of the light. Morris gasped once, choked on nothing, and collapsed. His body hit the floor with a hollow, final thud. His eyes were open. His mouth slightly parted. A single grain of sand rested on his tongue. We carried him out, the cold of his skin spreading into our hands like the echo of something ancient pulling him downward. Carter tried to speak, but the words broke apart in his throat. No one said curse, but every pair of eyes shouted it in silence. That night, I didn't dare close my eyes. The desert wind cried across the valley, low and mournful. The cliff seemed to lean inward as if listening. The fire burned too quietly. Every few minutes, a lantern flickered, shadows stretched, and someone stiffened as if touched by unseen fingers. Carter tried to keep us calm by reading the inscriptions aloud, dissecting the symbols, turning the curse into something academic. But the curse wasn't written on those walls. It was written in the air, and it was getting closer around midnight. I stepped away from the camp to breathe. The sky above was a smear of stars, indifferent and cold. The sand felt soft under my boots. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt almost human again. Then I noticed the footprints. Not ours, not the workers, not any creature alive. The same long, elaborate impressions I'd seen earlier. But this time, they formed a complete circle around the camp. Perfectly spaced, perfectly aligned, like someone or something was walking around us in the dark. Watching, I knelt down and touched one of the prints. It was warm, my blood froze. Behind me, sand shifted, slow and dragging, the way it would if someone was pulling a foot forward with tremendous reluctance, or tremendous age. I didn't turn around. I couldn't make that mistake. Every instinct screamed that to look would be to invite something inside. Myself that would never leave. I walked back to the camp slowly. Each step timed to the pounding in my chest the moment I sat down. The wind stopped, completely, as if held still by an invisible hand. The fire stilled. The lantern steadied. The air thickened, and then a shadow stretched across the ground, not from the moon. Not from any man. Not from anything with a shape that made sense. It was tall. Thin, its head misshapen, cracked. Like a skull with a fracture splitting down the center, the same shape I had seen inside the tomb. The same lightning-shaped line burned into my memory. The shadow stopped behind me, and slowly, impossibly, it leaned closer. I felt the cold seep into my spine like liquid frost. My fingers trembled. My breath stuttered. It didn't touch me. It didn't need to, because the curse wasn't a hand. It was a presence, a decision, a gaze older than human memory, and I could feel it choosing me. I shut my eyes. I whispered every prayer I remembered. But the only thing the night gave back was breath, not mine, sliding across my ear. You looked inside, it whispered. Then the fire roared to life, bright, violent, sudden, as if something had retreated from it. The shadow pulled back, stretching and trembling against the sand before it vanished into the dark. I was on. Tea next that night, but someone else was dead at dawn. A worker named Hassan was found lying on the ridge. His body twisted as if he had run until his legs gave out. His face turned toward the valley with an expression of pure terror carved into his final breath. His footprints told the story. They ran in a frantic zigzag, prints overlapping, sand thrown in desperate sprays. As if he'd tried to outrun something he never turned to face. A single line was scratched into the sand beside him, not in English, not in Arabic, not in hieroglyphs, a symbol, the same crack-shaped mark, the same lightning fracture, the same sign on Tutankhamun's mask, the same mark behind my eyes. And as the sun rose over the cliffs, I finally understood. The curse didn't follow us because we entered the tomb. The curse followed us because the moment we saw the mask, the moment we looked at the crack running down its golden face, we had seen him, and once you see him, he never stops seeing you. And knowing that changed something inside me. It wasn't fear anymore. Fear is sharp, immediate, alive. What I felt was deeper, a sinking weight, like a hand pressing on the back of my neck, guiding me gently toward a truth I didn't want to face. A truth that the others sensed too, though none of us dared speak it. The curse wasn't killing randomly. It wasn't punishing greed. It wasn't defending the tomb. It was hunting the ones who saw the fracture, the blue lightning line, the crack across the mask, the mark that didn't belong to Tutankhamun at all. That mark belonged to the guardian, the one the priests feared, the one buried inside the shadows, the one who walked barefoot through the sand while we slept. After Hassan died, Carter ordered the tomb sealed temporarily. He said it was out of respect for the dead, but everyone knew the truth. Even he was afraid now. His eyes had lost that burning hunger for discovery and were replaced with something hollow, something quietly breaking apart inside him. But it was too late. Sealing the tomb didn't trap anything. The curse wasn't inside anymore. It was already among us. That night, the seventh death arrived. Not sudden, not violent, not loud. It slipped into the camp like a sigh. Arthur, a man known for his steady calm, woke up screaming, clutching his throat, gasping for breath. We rushed to his tent, lanterns lighting the dust-filled night. But by the time we reached him, he was gone. His hands were frozen in front of his face, as if shielding himself from something only he could see. We found something carved onto the inside of his tent, shallow scratches made with trembling fingers. A symbol, the same lightning crack. Under it, 2 words in English: "He's here." The desert felt smaller after that, as if the cliffs leaned closer, as if the sand whispered under our feet, as if every shadow carried weight. Men spoke softly. Some prayed. Some packed to leave, but froze when they realized the footprints surrounding the camp had doubled dot, not ours. His dot, the guardian, wasn't wandering anymore. He was circling, hunting, choosing. The 8th death was the worst. Not because it was frightening, everything had become frightening, but because it was intimate. It happened to someone who had never entered the tomb, not once. Her name was Layla, a water carrier, a woman who brought us supplies from the valley. She never touched the artifacts, never stepped near the chamber, never even looked inside, but she had spoken to me 2 nights earlier as I stood alone outside the tents. Trying to make sense of the presence watching me, "I saw someone behind you," she said softly. I froze. "What do you mean?" She shivered. "A tall shadow, not shaped right. I thought maybe a worker. But then it disappeared when you turned." She saw him. Just a glimpse. Just a moment, and that was enough. We found her far from camp, lying face down in the sand with her arms stretched ahead as though crawling towards something she believed could save her. Around her body, the sand was disturbed, twisted into spirals, the same patterns found on the burial shroud inside Tutankhamun's chamber, as if something had circled her while she died. Carter collapsed to his knees when he saw her. That was the moment he broke. The moment he realized the curse wasn't a story. It wasn't metaphor. It wasn't fear. It was a presence, ancient, aware, deliberate. He ordered the camp abandoned. But abandoning the camp didn't abandon the curse, because it wasn't in the valley anymore. It was in us the night we packed to leave. Something unimaginable happened, something none of us ever spoke about again. The sky went silent. Not quiet. Silent. No wind, no insects, not even our footsteps made sound. Then the fire went out. Every lantern, every torch, every light, darkness swallowed us whole. I heard breathing, not from the men. From above them, like something standing over the entire camp, leaning down, inhaling the scent of fear. The sand trembled. My skin tightened. The air grew colder, colder still, until I could see my breath fogging the night. And in the darkness, something moved, slowly, deliberately, like a figure rising from a kneeling position, stretching its long body upward. I shut my eyes. But closing your eyes doesn't hide you from something that doesn't need sight to see. A whisper touched my ear again. You should not have looked. Something brushed my shoulder. A hand, not flesh, not bone, something in between. Then, suddenly, the flames roared back to life, every torch bursting upward in a column of heat. The guardian retreated, disappearing into the night with a low hum, like a chant cut short. Silence returned. We ran, all of us, as fast as our legs could carry us across the sand. No one looked back. No one dared, but fear outruns no curse. By the time we reached the edge of the valley, someone was missing. Thomas, a quiet man. Good-hearted, always kind, we searched until dawn. When we found him, he was lying beside a lone acacia tree, his face peaceful, his hands folded across his chest as though placed there gently. The symbol was drawn in the sand beside him. The crack. The lightning line. The mark of the guardian, and underneath, written in perfect English, "You cannot close what you opened." The curse wasn't a warning. It wasn't punishment, it was instruction, because something had awakened in that tomb. Something bound by ritual, freed by curiosity, guided by hunger. And it was still walking. Still choosing, still remembering. And I knew with a certainty that chilled my marrow, that I wasn't just another name on the list. I was the last one left. And being last didn't feel like survival. It felt like a sentence waiting for the moment it would be read aloud. Every breath I took felt borrowed. Every sunrise felt thinner than the one before. Every rustle of sand behind me felt like a countdown. The guardian didn't rush. He didn't need to. When your ancient hunger becomes patience. When you're cursed, killing becomes ritual. When you're bound by a spell older than empires, you don't chase, you arrive. I left the Valley of the Kings long before the others realized I wasn't coming back. I didn't pack much, just a journal, a candle, a few coins, and the small blue stone I had found near the sarcophagus, a stone that pulsed faintly with warmth even on the coldest nights. I didn't know why I took it. Maybe because it hummed softly in my hand, like a heartbeat belonging to something that wasn't meant to be touched. Maybe because I already understood it wasn't a stone at all. It was a key that train ride from Luxor to Cairo should have been a relief. A return to the world of noise and movement and breathing things. But the moment the train started moving, I felt it, the weight settling into the empty seat beside me, the cold creeping up my spine, the faint smell of dust and something older than dust. I didn't turn my head. I stared straight ahead at the desert rolling past, pretending the feeling wasn't there. But fear has a shape you can feel even without eyes. At one point, the man sitting across from me leaned forward and frowned. "Sir," he whispered, "you have a shadow behind you." My blood froze. Before I could speak, he blinked, rubbed his eyes, blinked again. "It's gone," he murmured. But we both knew it hadn't gone anywhere. It simply didn't need to be seen to be present. I stayed awake the entire journey, gripping the edge of the seat so tightly my knuckles burned. Every time the train passed through a tunnel, the darkness felt thicker, fuller, denser, as if something used the shadows to move closer. When I finally reached Cairo, the city felt wrong. Not dangerous wrong. Empty wrong. Street lamps flickered as I walked by. Windows rattled where there was no wind. Stray cats froze and stared at me before sprinting away. And everywhere I went, I saw the same symbol carved into a wooden stall, scratched onto a stone wall, drawn faintly in dust on the side of a cart. The crack. The lightning mark. The fracture of the guardian following me. I checked into a small inn near the edge of the city. The owner, an old man with shaking hands, looked at me oddly as he handed over the key. "You've brought something with you," he whispered. I didn't respond. If I said it aloud, it would become more real than I could bear. In my room, I lit a candle and sat on the bed, trying to steady my thoughts. My heartbeat echoed in my throat. My breaths came sharp and dry. And then I noticed the smell, the same metallic sweetness from the tomb. The scent of something sealed for too long. Something waking. I turned slowly. The corner of the room was darker than it should have been. Not shadow dark, void dark, a darkness with depth. A darkness with shape. A darkness that leaned forward. My candle flickered. And then the void spoke. You left, it whispered, its voice sliding through the room like dust across stone. My throat tightened. My hands went numb. You were chosen, it breathed. You looked inside. The walls trembled slightly, as if reacting to the vibration of its voice. My candles struggled, fighting to stay alive. The air thickened, pressing into my lungs until each breath felt like swallowing sand. "Why me?" I whispered. The darkness shifted a ripple, a shape forming inside it. You heard us. Us. Not me. Us. There wasn't one guardian. There were many, bound together by the curse, sealed within the tomb, feeding on silence for centuries. And when we opened the door, we hadn't freed just one presence. We had freed an echo of every ritual, every whisper, every spirit the priests trapped inside the Boy King's chamber. You opened the path, it said. You carried the mark. My chest tightened. My pulse stuttered. "The stone?" I whispered. "The one from the chamber. The blue, the heart," it hissed. "The vessel. The door." The door. The stone wasn't a relic. It wasn't an artifact. It was the final piece of the binding ritual, the piece that kept the curse contained by taking it. I had removed the last barrier. You freed us, it whispered. Almost gently. I felt the breath leave my body. The guardian stepped forward. Long limbs, cracked skull, blue glow leaking through the fracture like dying lightning. Eyes hollow, deep, ancient. I backed away until my spine hit the wall. My breath came in ragged bursts. My skin stung with cold. You killed them, I choked. All of them. It leaned closer. We remembered them. My heart hammered. "What do you want from me?" "You saw the truth," it murmured. "You carried the heart. You'll carry the rest." My vision blurred. The candle died. Darkness swallowed the room whole, and in the suffocating silence, my hand wrapped around my shoulder, not flesh, not bone, but something like both pulling me forward into the shadows. But then, a knock on the door, a normal human knock, 3 sharp raps. The shadow froze. The room shuddered. The guardian trembled, not in fear, but in irritation. It withdrew just slightly. The knock came again, sir. A woman's voice. "The innkeeper's daughter." I brought water. "Your lamp went out?" Light spilled in through the door crack, faint, warm, human. The guardian recoiled for the first time. It stepped back. The light wasn't powerful, but it was presence, life, awareness, and the curse hated being seen by the living. Another time, it whispered, retreating into the darkness until only its outline lingered in the corner. The door opened wider. The girl stepped halfway into the room. "Sir, are you all right? You look pale." I swallowed hard and managed a nod. She placed the water beside me and left. The door shut softly, and I knew. I hadn't escaped. I had delayed, just delayed, because the curse wasn't finished with me, and now it was moving faster. And when a curse begins to move faster, it doesn't announce itself with thunder or screams. It arrives quietly like a second pulse beneath your heartbeat, like a shadow that walks a half step behind you no matter how brightly the sun shines. The next morning, I felt it before I opened my eyes. The room was cold. Not the gentle morning chill of Cairo, but the deep, bone-soaking cold of underground stone. My breath fogged in front of me. The window was open. But the curtains weren't moving. Air was entering the room, but nothing was leaving. I sat up slowly, every sense alert. The corner where the guardian hid last night was empty, but the scent remained, that metallic sweetness. The breath of a sealed tomb. On the small table near my bed, the blue stone pulsed faintly. I stared at it. It pulsed again, not like a glow, But, like a heartbeat, my stomach turned. I picked it up carefully between my fingers. It vibrated, as if something inside it was alive and trying to escape. When I held it to my ear, I heard a faint sound, a whisper layered over another whisper. Thousands of voices humming beneath each other like the deep rumble of a distant storm. And when I lowered it, a single thought slid across my mind like a cold finger. Don't carry the door. Not my voice. Not human. I dropped the stone instantly. It hit the floor and rolled under the bed, humming louder as it disappeared into the shadows. I felt a tremor run up my spine. For the first time, I realized I wasn't carrying the curse. The curse was carrying me. I packed my things and left the inn within minutes. The old man behind the counter refused to take my money. He only whispered something in Arabic, voice shaking. You are walking with the dead. Leave quickly. Outside, Cairo was alive, crowded streets. Sellers shouting, donkey carts clattering, children running. But beneath that life, I sensed something else moving with me. People brushed past me and shivered. Lamps dimmed. A stray dog backed away with its tail between its legs. I made my way to the museum. My plan was simple. Return the stone to where it belonged. Back to the artifacts. Back to the burial objects. Back to anything Egyptian that could hold it safely. But before I reached the entrance, a guard stepped in front of me. You shouldn't come here, he said. I need to speak to someone. No, his voice dropped. You need to leave. I stared at him. How do you know that? He swallowed. Your shadow. It's wrong. I looked down, and my blood froze. My shadow was split down the center, a jagged crack running right through the skull, exactly like the Guardian's mark. I stepped back. The guard stepped back too, fear tightening his face. Whatever's with you, he whispered, does not belong among the living. I didn't argue. I ran down the museum steps, through the street, into an alleyway where I collapsed against the wall. Shaking, my shadow flickered on the ground beside me, not with sunlight. With movement, it shifted, as if something inside it was trying to stand up. I slapped my hand over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. The curse was no longer behind me. It was inside my shadow. The sun passed behind a building, and for a moment, the world darkened. The shadow rose just slightly, like a figure stretching upward. Long limbs, cracked head, hollow center. The Guardian was learning to walk through me. I staggered away from the wall, heart pounding, breath cutting like broken glass. I needed help, not from science, not from historians, but from someone who understood the old ways. And there was one man. A name whispered to me by the innkeeper's daughter before she disappeared into the night. Sharif al-Nadim, a ritual keeper, last of his line. A man who swore never to step foot in the Valley of the Kings because, as he claimed, some spirits were never meant to be awakened. I found his home on the outskirts of the city, a small, crumbling building half swallowed by vines. The windows were covered with thick cloth. Chimes made of bone hung from the roof, clacking gently even though there was no wind. I knocked, no answer. I knocked again. A voice from inside croaked. Enter only if you bring no shadows. My heart sank. I can't do that, I whispered. Silence. Then the door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dim hallway smelling of herbs and burnt incense. A frail old man with silver hair and trembling hands stepped into the light. His eyes widened when he saw me. He breathed. You're the one who touched the heart. I didn't know what it was. No one ever does. That's how it chooses. He gestured inside. I hesitated. He sighed. Come quickly, before it follows you in. I stepped through the doorway. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the air changed warmer, thicker, vibrating with a pulse that wasn't mine. The old man slammed the door shut behind me and threw 3 locks into place. "You shouldn't be alive," he whispered. "I know." "No," he said. "You don't." He hobbled toward a table cluttered with scrolls, stones, and candles. He lit one and placed it between us. "Tell me," he said, "how many have died since you opened the tomb?" 12, I whispered. "Maybe more." He nodded slowly. "It will not stop. I want to return the stone." "You can't," he said sharply. "The stone cannot be returned. Once it chooses a bearer, only death removes it." My stomach dropped. There must be a way to stop it. He leaned close, eyes dark and shaking. "There is no stopping a Pharaoh's guardian. It was crafted by priests who believed even death was too gentle for the enemies of their king. You are marked by what you saw. The crack, the fracture, the lightning. You saw more than gold." I swallowed. "What did I see?" His voice trembled. "You saw the spirit that kills the living, the guardian." He shook his head. "No, the guardian serves him." I felt the room tilt, then the window behind us slammed open violently, cloth ripping as a blast of icy air flooded the room. The candles flickered. The shadows writhed along the walls like trapped snakes. Sharif's eyes widened. "It's here," he whispered. The crack in my shadow widened. The blue light leaked out, and the temperature dropped to the cold of the inner tomb. "I told you," Sharif choked, gripping my wrist. "It doesn't want the stone back. It wants the bearer." My throat tightened. "Why?" He whispered the final truth before the darkness swallowed the room in one sudden breath. "Because you freed the king beneath the king." And before I could ask what that meant, every candle in the room went out at the same time, not flickered, not dimmed, but extinguished, as if a giant hand had crushed the flame between its fingers. The darkness didn't fall. It arrived, pouring into the room like a living fog, thick and suffocating. I couldn't see Sharif. I couldn't see the table. All I could see was the faint blue glow pulsing inside my shadow. Sharif's hand tightened around my wrist. "Don't move," he whispered, barely audible. "It's searching." My breath hitched. The air in the room vibrated, deep and resonant, like the hum of a massive drum struck from beneath the earth. The sound wrapped around us, circling, rising, falling, almost smelling the space, tasting the air. Whatever had entered the room was not the guardian. It was something. Stronger, older, angrier, something the guardian itself obeyed. Ah! Soft, dragging sounds slithered across the floor like fingers pulling through dust. Slow, deliberate, patient. Then the sound stopped right beside me. The cold gathered around my ankles. My lungs squeezed tight. My heart thrashed inside my chest like it wanted to break out. Sharif whispered, trembling, "Don't breathe." I tried. I tried so hard. But the cold pressed into me, forcing a sharp gasp from between my lips. The moment the air left my lungs, the presence turned toward me. A slow shift. A deep rumble. A shape forming inside the darkness, massive and wrong, ancient and broken. Not a man. Not a shadow. Something in between. A figure with a hollow chest, a cracked like shattered stone, and a head split down the middle with a glowing blue fracture running through it. The same fracture as the mask. The same lightning as the tomb. But this wasn't the guardian. This was the source. The king beneath the king, not Tutankhamun. Something buried before him. Something sealed beneath his chamber. Something the priests hid inside the tomb of a child king to disguise its resting place. And I had opened the door to it. The figure leaned forward, its height stretching impossibly, its cracked skull hovering above me. The blue light inside the fracture flickered as if searching through my skin, burning through my mind. A whisper echoed inside my head. Not outside, not in my ears, but inside. Wrapping around my thoughts, you carried the heart. My knees buckled. Sharif grabbed my arm, trying to keep me upright. But his strength was fading. Whatever was in the room was draining the warmth from his body. The voice inside my skull deepened. You opened my path. The floor trembled. The air split. My shadow stretched toward the figure like a puppet string pulled taut. Sharif slammed his hand to the ground and whispered something in an ancient tongue. A chant that shook the dust from the shelves. A faint circle of light flickered around us, weak, trembling. Barely holding back the darkness. The figure recoiled, hissing not with fear, but with annoyance. Sharif's voice cracked. You can't take him. You cannot stop me. The voice thundered inside my chest. He is marked. He is mine. Sharif coughed blood. His body shook violently. He tried to continue the chant, but the darkness pressed into him like a hand crushing his lungs. The figure lifted an arm. Long and twisted, the bones showing through the cracked, dusty skin. I couldn't look away. Its fingers extended toward my chest, not to touch, but to pull. I felt my soul loosen. Hair lifting. Skin freezing. My heart beat slowing. Slowing. Sharif screamed a final word. A sharp, tearing, ancient command. The blue glow inside the fracture flickered wildly. The figure shuddered, not defeated, but disrupted. The room exploded with light, a burst from the circle Sharif had drawn. The blast threw me backward against the wall. My vision blurred. My ears rang. The darkness recoiled violently, ripping itself away from the room like a storm being sucked into a crack. And for a moment, everything was still. Sharif collapsed, gasping. Smoke rose from the floor. The blue glow vanished. My shadow lay flat again, trembling slightly, shivering. I crawled toward him. What? What was that? I whispered, voice breaking. Sharif lifted his shaking hand toward me, eyes wide with terror. That was the one the priests feared, he said. The one they buried beneath the boy king to hide him. The guardian is only a servant. But him, his voice cracked. Him they called the Pharaoh of the dead. My breath stopped. The king beneath the king. I whispered to Sharif, nodded weakly. You freed him. And now he walks. The room shook. The window rattled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Sharif stiffened. He's coming back. The candles flared suddenly, then bent sideways toward the door, as if pulled by a wind that didn't exist. Sharif grabbed my shirt and yanked me close. Listen to me, he whispered desperately. There is only one way to survive him. My heart pounded. How? Tell me. His eyes locked onto mine, wild, terrified, fading. Return to the valley, he hissed. Return to the tomb. You must face the place where you awakened him. Return. Are you insane? That's suicide. No, he whispered. Running is suicide. He grows stronger with distance. He is bound to the place of awakening. The further you go, the more he hunts. The closer you get, the weaker he becomes. I swallowed. You're saying I have to go back? Sharif nodded once, trembling. To the place where it began. The tomb, the chamber, the sarcophagus. Bring the heart. Complete the circle. I stared at him. The stone. It's under the bed at the inn. His eyes widened with horror. Then he already knows. He will go there next. My blood turned to ice, and then a knock at the F. Door. Slow. Heavy. Rhythmic, not human. 3 knocks. Then, silence. Sharif's face went white. He's here. The door's shadow split down the middle. A crack of blue lightning glowing. Across the floor, Sharif pushed me toward the back. Wall go, he whispered. Go now. Run to the desert. Run to the tomb. It's your only chance. I hesitated. What about you? Sharif's eyes softened. I'm already dead. The door exploded inward. Darkness flooded the room, and the Pharaoh of the dead stepped through. And the moment he entered, the temperature dropped so violently that every surface in the room frosted white. My breath crystallized in the air. Sharif's bones stiffened beneath his skin. The shadows twisted upward like living creatures bowing to their king. The figure towered in the doorway, tall, impossibly tall, its cracked skull glowing from within, leaking blue light like the last ember of a dying star. The fissure down its head pulsed slowly, like it was breathing. The Pharaoh of the dead didn't walk. He glided, silent, effortless. I felt every instinct inside me scream to flee, to collapse, to stop existing. His presence was too ancient, too heavy, too wrong for the living world. It pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't see, a hand that could crush me without touching me at all. Sharif staggered between me and the creature, lifting his trembling arms. You cannot take him, he whispered. The Pharaoh tilted his head with slow, curious disdain, like a giant examining an ant that dared stand in its path. You think you hold power, he said. But his voice didn't enter my ears. It vibrated inside my skull, vibrating my bones. You are dust. Sharif screamed a final incantation, a desperate, broken attempt to repeat the ritual that had saved me moments ago. But this time, the Pharaoh raised one finger, and the sound died in Sharif's throat. Literally, his voice stopped existing. Sharif clawed at his neck, eyes bulging, gasping silently as he stumbled backward. The Pharaoh drifted closer, the blue crack glowing brighter with each movement. I have existed since before names, he whispered inside my mind. Before kings, before gods. I am not bound by your rituals. He placed one hand on Sharif's chest, and Sharif's body collapsed inward, not crushed, not flattened, folded dash-like paper being pressed by an invisible force. His bones bent at impossible angles, ribs folding into his spine, limbs bending backward as if the laws of nature had been dismissed. It lasted 3 seconds. Sharif's final expression wasn't fear. It was acceptance. His body fell to the floor, not with a thud, but with a soft, hollow sound, like dropping an empty shell. My stomach twisted. My knees weakened. My throat burned with nausea and terror. The Pharaoh turned his cracked skull toward me. You carry the heart, she said, his voice frost and stone, ancient and patient. And you will bring it back to me. My body refused to move. Every muscle locked. The room shrank around me. The blue light from the crack intensified, brightening until it painted the walls with shimmering cold. My vision blurred. My hearing faded. Only his voice remained, echoing like thunder inside my ribs. Run, he whispered. Not a threat. A command. The shadows behind him parted like obedient servants. A corridor of darkness opened. I could feel the pull, a tug beneath my skin, as if my bones wanted to walk toward him on their own. I stumbled backward, hitting the far wall. My hands shook violently, searching for anything, any object, any weapon, any hope. My fingers brushed a small clay pot, Sharif's scrolls, a candle stub. None of them mattered. The Pharaoh extended his hand, palm opening like a portal, the blue crack widening across his skull like lightning ready to strike. Bring me the heart, he said again, or I will take yours. That broke me free. I lunged for the window, grabbing the wooden frame with both hands, crashing through it with a desperate burst of strength I didn't know I had. The glass shattered. My arms sliced open. Pain ripped through my side as I landed on the hard earth outside. I didn't stop. I forced myself to run through the alley, past the abandoned carts, onto the street, into the blinding daylight behind me. The world dimmed, not the sunlight, the air, as if the darkness itself was following, stretching forward. Bending the light around it, I sprinted harder. People stared as I ran through the streets. Some screamed. Some crossed themselves. Some fled. Because behind me, even in broad daylight, the shadows were longer than they should have been. They stretched toward me like fingers. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs felt raw, until my legs shook, until I tasted blood in my throat. I ran past the outer walls of Cairo into the open desert, where the wind howled in disbelief and the sand shifted beneath me like a living thing. Only when I was miles away did I collapse onto my knees. The desert stretched endlessly ahead. The valley lay far in the distance. The tomb waited, a black wound beneath the cliffs. I realized then I was going back, not because Sharif told me to, not because the curse demanded it, but because the Pharaoh wouldn't stop, not unless I returned the heart, not unless I entered the tomb again, not unless I faced what I had awakened. I pressed my hand against the wound on my arm, feeling the sticky warmth of blood. My shadow beside me trembled, and for the first time, the crack in it glowed faintly. A reminder, a warning, a countdown. The sun sank lower. The wind died. The silence returned, and somewhere behind me, on the edge of the desert, I heard the crunch of sand beneath slow, patient, ancient footsteps. He had begun to follow me. And those footsteps didn't sound rushed. They sounded inevitable, the kind of steps taken by something that has followed men across centuries, across kingdoms, across the thin veil between life and death. I didn't dare look back. I already knew what I'd see: a tall silhouette against the dying sun, a cracked skull glowing with blue fire, a shadow that stretched longer than any living thing should cast. I forced myself to stand, legs trembling, breath broken. The desert ahead shimmered with heat, the horizon wavering like a curtain of ghosts. I set my eyes on the cliffs of Luxor, barely visible in the distance, where the Valley of the Kings carved its ancient secrets into stone. The tomb awaited me. The chamber. The sarcophagus. The place where I had opened the heart of the curse. My steps were uneven at first, but desperation steadied them. As I walked, the wind died completely. The desert fell silent. Not the peaceful silence of night, but a heavy, listening silence. Even the grains of sand seemed to pause in midair, waiting. Every few minutes, I felt a cold pressure on my back. Not a touch, more like a stare. A weight. The presence behind me grew and shrank like breath, as though the Pharaoh walked just beyond sight. Not chasing, not hunting, simply accompanying me, punishing me. The sun dipped lower, its last light staining the sky crimson. Shadows stretched long across the dunes. Mine stretched too, and the crack running down its head glowed brighter, one slow pulse after another, like a countdown of heartbeats. I walked faster. Dusk crawled across the desert, swallowing colors, swallowing warmth, swallowing hope. The sky turned violet. The clouds bent strangely, curling inward like claws. The sand darkened until it looked like spilled ink, and then I saw it, a small black shape on the horizon. The tomb, a scar in the earth, half buried, half exposed, waiting for me like a mouth waiting to swallow its final meal. My breath hitched. My feet slowed. Every instinct inside me screamed to turn back. But behind me, the footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a whisper curled through the air, soft, patient, broken. Closer. I shivered so hard my teeth clacked. He wasn't rushing me. He wanted me to go on. He wanted me to return what I had taken. He wanted me to finish what I had started. Or maybe He wanted me to trap myself inside the tomb forever. I adjusted my steps, moving downhill toward the valley. The cliffs loomed closer now, ancient jagged fingers reaching toward the sky. The air grew colder with each step. The sand felt heavier beneath my feet as if it clung to my ankles, pulling me deeper. Night arrived quickly. One moment the world was dim. The next it was swallowed whole. A sliver of moon hung in the sky, thin and pale, barely lighting my path. My shadow shivered in the faint light, the crack glowing faintly like a bruise under the skin. I tried not to look at it. The more I looked, the more it seemed to move on its own, twitching, stretching, reaching. Finally, I reached the entrance of the tomb. The stone seal we had broken weeks ago still lay cracked on the ground. The opening yawned before me, blacker than the night around it. A cold draft seeped from inside, not air, not wind. Something older. Something weighting my hands trembled as I lit the torch I'd taken from Sharif's home. The flame fought against the tomb's breath, wavering violently, shrinking with each exhale of ancient cold. Behind me, the footsteps halted, the desert grew absolutely still. The torch dimmed, and a whisper that shook the sand around my feet, rose from behind me. Enter. I swallowed, throat tight, and stepped inside. The narrow passage swallowed me whole. The air grew thick, humid, metallic. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, bouncing back too quickly, as if the walls were closer than they should have been. Every breath tasted like ancient dust and something sweeter. The same scent that clung to the stone the first night. The torch dimmed again, then flickered, then steadied. I moved deeper, past the first corridor, past the second chamber, past the painted walls that once seemed beautiful but now looked like warning signs, gods with outstretched hands. Eyes wide with fear, symbols bent strangely. Lines drawn to trap something. By the time I reached the threshold of the burial chamber, my heartbeat was so loud that it echoed off the stone. I stepped inside. The sarcophagus lay in the center, cracked open, its carved guardians staring upward as if begging for release. The air burned cold. My breath formed clouds. The torch dimmed until it looked like a dying ember. Shadows clung to the corners like webs. And then I heard breathing, not my breathing, not air. Breathing from inside the sarcophagus, slow, rhythmic. Waiting, the hair on my neck stood straight. I approached slowly, each step deliberate, each breath a struggle. My hand reached for the blue stone in my pocket, but when my fingers touched it, it burned. The hum inside it intensified. The whispers grew louder. The heartbeat inside the stone accelerated. I held it above the sarcophagus. The chamber trembled. The air thickened. The shadows bent. And a voice rose from the stone itself. "Return us." I braced myself, but nothing could prepare me for what happened next. The room shifted, not the walls, not the floor. Reality, it folded inward. Like the space around me was being pulled toward the tomb's heart. A shape rose from the sarcophagus, not fully, clearly, just a silhouette. Humanoid, but hollow, cracked down the center. Blue light leaked from the fracture like liquid lightning. The Pharaoh of the dead had arrived. Not behind me, not beside me. Inside the tomb, I turned to run, but the entrance behind me? Closed, stone grinding, dust falling, darkness laughing. I was trapped. The torch went out, and the chamber filled with blue light. The Pharaoh stepped forward, towering, ancient, inevitable. "You returned," he whispered, not relief, not gratitude, ownership. I held up the stone with shaking hands. He extended his cracked palm. "Give me the heart." For a moment, I considered it, ending this, letting him take it, letting him take me. But then I remembered Sharif's final words. "Complete the circle." not surrender. Complete, I looked down. The floor was carved with symbols. A circle buried beneath dust. A ritual undone. I understood. The stone wasn't meant to be returned to the Pharaoh. It was meant to be returned to the circle. The Pharaoh sensed my realization. He roared, a deafening, low, shattering roar that shook the chamber and cracked the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Golden shrines trembled. He lunged. I dove toward the circle, the blue stone burning in my hand, aiming for the center end as he reached for me. Everything went dark. And in that darkness, there was no time, no sound, no world. Just a weight pressing my body into the floor, as if the entire tomb had collapsed onto my spine. The air was gone. The cold was absolute. The stone in my hand pulsed like a frantic heart fighting for its last beat. I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or closed. It didn't matter. Nothing existed except the crushing presence above me. Ancient, aware, hungry dot. Then, slowly, the darkness began to shift. A faint blue glow leaked into existence, crawling across the chamber floor, outlining the circle I had fallen into. The carvings beneath me pulsed faintly. Symbols lighting one by one like dying embers trying to reignite. The Pharaoh's voice came next, not loud, but everywhere. You cannot break what binds us. His cracked silhouette materialized above me, rising like a shadow lifted from the earth itself. The blue fissure running through his skull blazed brighter than before. Dripping light like molten metal, he reached toward me not to kill, to claim. His fingers stretched, long and skeletal, pulling at my chest as if my soul had threads he could pluck loose. My vision dimmed. My breath collapsed inward. The stone in my hand screamed with light. Complete the circle. Sharif's trembling voice echoed inside my skull. I slammed the stone onto the center of the circle. The chamber exploded with blue fire. The floor glowed. Symbols ignited. The carvings sparked like lightning racing across stone. The Pharaoh staggered, for the first time showing something like surprise. "No," he hissed. His voice shook the chamber. "You do not understand, but I did." The circle wasn't designed to trap a spirit. It was designed to bind a vessel. Tutankhamun's tomb wasn't a resting place. It was a cage built to hold him, the Pharaoh beneath the king, the spirit before the child, the one whose name the priests erased from stone and memory. And the blue stone, not treasure, not artifact, a missing piece of the lock. When I dropped it into the circle, the carvings sealed around it with a crack like thunder. The blue lines on the floor connected, pulsing with ancient power. For a moment, the entire chamber glowed with a light older than Egypt itself. The Pharaoh roared. The blue fissure on his skull widened violently, spilling light across the chamber like lightning tearing open the dark. His entire form shook, edges warping, shadows bending. "You open the door," he thundered. "You cannot close it." The circle ignited. A column of blue fire shot upward, striking the Pharaoh in the chest. His form convulsed, bending and cracking like dried clay. The chamber walls rattled. The sarcophagus lid slammed shut with a force that shook the earth. The guardian appeared, the tall shadow we had seen in the tomb, its crack-headed silhouette rising from the darkness. Like a servant obeying an ancient command, it didn't attack me. It seized the Pharaoh's arms. The Pharaoh thrashed. "No." He roared, voice splitting the air. "I am not bound." "I am," but the guardian dragged him downward, pulling him into the circle, into the stone, into the glowing fissures that closed around him like jaws. The chamber trembled violently. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Golden altars toppled. Hieroglyphs cracked and flaked. The guardian pushed the Pharaoh deeper, deeper, until the blue fissure in his skull was the only light left. He reached upward with one last grasp, in the circle sealed shut. Everything went silent. The chamber went dark. The cold vanished. The presence disappeared. For the first time since opening the tomb, I felt air enter my lungs freely. My body trembled with the sudden absence of weight. The stone lay fused into the floor, its blue glow fading into nothing. The carvings dimmed one by one until all that remained was the faint outline of the circle. I lay there for what felt like hours, breathing, alive. Alone, finally, I forced myself to stand. My legs shook. My chest burned. But I stood. The guardian was gone. The Pharaoh was sealed again. The curse quiet. I stumbled toward the entrance of the burial chamber, using the wall for support. My footsteps echoed softly, no longer accompanied by a second set of invisible steps behind me. When I reached the doorway, I hesitated. The passage beyond was quiet, still empty, but there was one final thing I needed to see. I lifted my torch from the ground and lit it again. The flame rose without resistance, bright, warm, human. I held it toward the wall, toward the place where, days earlier, I had seen the silhouette etched into the stone. It was gone, not faded, not cracked, gone, erased as if it had never existed. My chest tightened. The priest's binding ritual had worked. The guardian wasn't trapped. He was released, freed to rest, and the Pharaoh contained once more. I turned away and stepped into the passage. The tomb's corridors seemed wider now, less suffocating. The air smelled like ancient stone again, not death. The silence felt empty, not watched. My footsteps were the only ones I heard. When I finally reached the surface, the first light of dawn touched the cliffs. The sky glowed soft pink. The desert shimmered gently. The world felt alive again. I exhaled a long, broken breath I'd been holding since the first night we opened the tomb. It was over. But as I stepped out of the tomb, something caught my eye. My shadow, it stretched across the sand. Normal? No. No. Crack. No glow. No second outline. I closed my eyes, almost crying with relief, for the first time. I was just a man again. But then, as the sun rose higher, I saw something else, a faint mark carved into the stone beside the tomb entrance. Not the crack, not the lightning, a single symbol, one I had never seen before, fresh, sharp, etched, with unnatural precision, a warning. Not from the Pharaoh, from the guardian. A message left for me alone. 2 words, not finished. And those 2 words carved into the stone froze every drop of blood in my veins. Not finished. The sun warmed my skin, but the warmth didn't reach inside me. That message wasn't a threat. It wasn't a curse. It was a truth spoken from something that existed before truth even had a name. Something I felt in my bones long before I could understand it. I turned slowly, half expecting to see a tall shadow standing behind me. Cracked skull, glowing with blue fire. But the desert was empty, silent, unmoved. The tomb sat behind me like a sleeping beast, its entrance sealed by the morning light. Its secrets buried beneath layers of stone and regret. Yet the symbol burned in my mind, not finished. The guardian hadn't warned me to run. He hadn't warned me to hide. He had warned me that what happened below the desert wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. I stumbled away from the tomb, my legs weak, my breath trembling, my thoughts scattered like sand in the wind. Every step felt like walking out of a world I no longer belonged to. A world where the dead stayed dead, where curses were stories, where shadows behaved like shadows. That world was gone by the time I reached the valley path. The sun had risen fully. Its warmth felt unfamiliar, almost foreign, like sunlight shining on a place not meant for it. My mind drifted through fragments of the night before. The Pharaoh's roar. The circle blazing with ancient power. Sharif's final scream. The guardian dragging the spirit downward. It should have been enough to free me, to end the curse, to restore balance. But the words carved into the stone followed me like a second shadow. Not finished, I reached the edge of the valley. A few workers were beginning their day, unaware of the nightmare buried beneath the cliffs. One of them, a young boy carrying jars of water, stopped and stared at me. His eyes widened in fear. Mister, he whispered, stepping back, you look wrong. My heart stuttered. What do you mean? He pointed at my chest. I looked down. A faint shimmer glowed beneath my shirt. Not blue, not bright, but real. A soft pulse, like something beneath my skin, struggling to sleep. My fingers trembled as I pressed my palm against it. The flesh felt cold. The beat felt separate from my own heart. The guardian had dragged the Pharaoh into the circle. But something had passed into me before the seal closed. A fragment. A spark. A residue. A piece of the king beneath the king. The curse wasn't finished because the curse was no longer contained. I took a step back, nearly stumbling. The ground tilted beneath me. The boy ran away, calling for someone, but I barely heard him. My mind raced through possibilities, through memories, through Sharif's trembling warnings. The stone cannot be returned, he had said. Once it chooses a bearer, only death removes it. But the stone was gone, shattered, absorbed by the seal. So why was something still inside me? I forced myself to breathe, to calm the storm in my chest. But the pulsing beneath my skin only grew stronger, like it responded to my panic. I gritted my teeth and moved toward a shaded rock. Trying to steady myself, the pulse throbbed again, then again, and with each beat, the world around me dimmed for a fraction of a second. Not visibly, subtly. The sound of the breeze slowed. The heat of the sun softened. The shadows thickened, as if drawn toward me. I clenched my fists. No, I whispered. You're gone. You're sealed. The air around me trembled. A whisper curled against my ear. So soft it could have been illusion. We are never gone. My breath caught. I spun around, but no one was there. Only the cliffs. Only the desert. Only my own trembling shadow fluttering on the ground. But then my shadow twitched, not with the wind, not with movement. With reaction, it moved half a second. Before I did, I stepped back. The shadow hesitated, then followed. The curse wasn't outside me anymore. It was inside the space. My body cast between light and stone. My shadow pulsed once. The faintest trace of blue leaking through the crack. That hadn't been there a moment ago. I swallowed hard. Whatever residue of the Pharaoh or the ritual or the stone had entered me. It was alive, not strong, not awakened fully, but present. Waiting, I moved toward the path leading out of the valley. My movements shaky, my mind spiraling. Each step felt heavier. The world seemed to bend slightly, just barely, like something inside me shifted the air around it. When I reached the edge of the desert again, I stopped and looked one last time at the valley dot, at the tomb, at the cliffs, at the place where the dead should have stayed dead. I whispered to myself, it's over. It has to be, but the wind disagreed. It rose suddenly, swirling around me in a tight spiral, lifting sand from the ground. The grains spun around my body like a warning, like a message forming from the desert itself. The wind stilled, and when the sand settled, I saw it written faintly at my feet. Finish it. My pulse hammered. Finish what? The ritual? The curse? The binding? The story? Or something else? Something darker? Something waiting for completion? I stepped away from the message, heart shaking, mind racing. I began walking toward the distant outline of the city. The desert stretched endlessly ahead of me, shimmering with heat, whispering with ancient voices. With each step, the pulse inside my chest throbbed again, slow and rhythmic. And somehow, I felt the Pharaoh's gaze still searching for me, not to kill me, not to claim me, but to use me, because the curse wasn't finished, not with the tomb, not with the valley, not with the dead. It wasn't finished with me. And as the sun climbed higher, and the desert wind shifted, and my shadow twitched again with a pulse not my own, I realized a truth colder than any night in the Valley of the Kings. I didn't escape the curse. I became part of it. And once that realization settled into me, not into my mind, but into the deeper, quieter place beneath thought, the desert no longer felt like the world I had known all my life. It felt thinner, as if every grain of sand had eyes, as if every gust of wind carried whispers that weren't shaped by air, but by memory. Ancient memory. My steps felt wrong. Not painful, not heavy, wrong. As if I was walking with feet that were mine, but a purpose that wasn't. With every few steps, a pulse inside my chest synced with my shadow's flicker, a faint blue twitch, like lightning trapped beneath the surface of the darkness I cast. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the horizon, on the path ahead, on the city that grew closer with each desperate stride. But the curse had no intention of being ignored. Halfway through the desert, my vision shifted. The sky didn't change, the sand didn't change, but distance changed. The city suddenly felt farther. The dunes stretched. The path elongated like a dream, slipping away as you run toward it. I clenched my fists, forcing myself forward. Then something happened that froze me mid-step. The sun, bright and burning above me, flickered. Just for an instant. A blink. But enough to make me stop breathing. The sun doesn't flicker. Not unless something is standing between you and it. I looked at the ground. My shadow was no longer behind me. It stood beside me, a half step to the right, facing the opposite direction. Its head cracked down the center, glowing softly, faintly, like the last shimmer of dying embers. I staggered backward. My shadow didn't move. My throat closed. Slowly, possibly, it turned its head toward me. Not fast, not violent, slow, curious, like a thing observing what it was becoming. My knees weakened. My breath shattered. Then the shadow tilted its cracked head, the blue fissure pulsing with a soft hum that vibrated through the sand. "Why?" I whispered, barely able to speak. My shadow stretched slightly, widening as though inhaling the world around it. A whisper slid into my mind like a strand of cold air. "You carry him." My pulse jumped. The sky darkened for a moment. The ground trembled slightly under my feet. The Pharaoh's essence. The last fragment. The residue that escaped the ritual. It wasn't trapped inside the tomb anymore. It was inside me, and my shadow was beginning to remember. Its true shape. I backed away slowly. One step. Then another. My shadow followed late. A half-second delay, like it was learning, adapting, sinking with me. Then it caught up. The blue fissure brightened. A sudden force slammed into my chest, knocking me back into the sand. I gasped as the air rushed from my lungs. When I looked up, the desert sky spun above me in dizzy circles. The shadow hovered over me now, leaning, stretching, towering, not touching, but waiting. I scrambled to my feet, shaking violently. Sand stuck to my skin, lungs burning. "No," I whispered. "No, you're sealed. You're gone." The whisper returned, not finished. I felt something tug inside my chest. Not my heart, not an organ. Something deeper. Something like a thread. I dropped to one knee. Pain shot through my spine. The desert blurred, and then I felt it. A presence. Behind me, not the shadow. Him, the Pharaoh of the dead. Far away, yet close. Enough to taste the air around me. His voice threaded through the wind. You closed the door, but not the path. The path. The binding circle sealed the spirit, but the path the priests used to bind him, the channel, the conduit, the heart had latched onto me. I wasn't possessed. I wasn't cursed. I was becoming a vessel, a living version of the stone I shattered. No, I breathed. No, 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 the ground beneath me cracked just a thin line, a tiny fracture. But unmistakable, a blue glow seeped out, the same glow as the fracture on the Pharaoh's skull, the same glow as the stone, the same glow as the curse itself. The desert under my feet was waking. The pulse inside my chest synced with it. A thought pierced my mind, unwelcomed, ancient, sharp. Return to the circle. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a threat. It was instinct. A pull like gravity, like fate, like something new that until I returned to the tomb, the Pharaoh's essence inside me would continue to grow. I stumbled forward, dragging myself across the sand. My breaths came broken. My skin prickled with heat and cold at once. My shadow flickered erratically, like a flame fighting an unseen storm. And behind me, faint but gaining strength, I heard footsteps. Not fast, not rushed, but certain, following with perfect rhythm. The same footsteps that had followed me across the desert. The same footsteps I'd heard inside Sharif's house. The same footsteps that tracked every man who entered the tomb. Before they died, I forced myself upright. The valley was now behind me. The city far ahead. Both paths felt wrong. Both felt dangerous. Both felt like choices I didn't understand. But the footsteps behind me grew louder, closer, heavier, like they were settling into the sand with more weight than before. I turned, not my head, my body, slowly, painfully, knowing exactly what I'd see. But the desert behind me was empty. No figure, no shadow, no guardian. Only the dunes, only the wind, only silence. Then the sand behind me shifted just once. A perfect footprint appeared, pressed deeply into the earth. Not mine, followed by another and another, walking toward me. My heartbeat stumbled. I whispered into the empty air, "What do you want from me?" The answer came from everywhere at once. "To finish what you began." And the moment those words curled through the desert wind, "Finish what you began," everything inside me tightened as if invisible hands had gripped my ribs and refused to let go. The air grew thin. My legs trembled. I couldn't tell if the heat pressing against my skin came from the sun above or the presence behind me. Slowly knitting itself back into the world, the footprints in the sand stopped only a few steps away. The wind stilled. The world seemed to lean closer, listening. I didn't move. Couldn't move. It felt like the desert had swallowed my will. A pulse throbbed inside my chest, strong, stronger, like something was waking up beneath my heart, stretching, anchoring, rooting itself deeper. I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice, "I sealed you. You can't exist anymore." The wind laughed, not loudly, not with sound, but with movement. A swirl, a twist. A cold brush across my cheek. A whisper followed, softer than breath. "You sealed one part." My mouth went dry. One part. A second pulse hit my chest. Harder, my shadow flickered again. Not behind me now, but directly beneath me, the crack returned. Blue light bled through it. I stumbled backward, panic clawing through me. No, no. I finished the circle. I closed the ritual. The voice answered calmly. "You closed the vessel." The footsteps came again, slow, measured, deliberate, circling me now, though no figure walked the sand. The wind shaped the sound, the desert carried it, and my bones heard it clearer than my ears. But the path remains. My stomach twisted. The path. The unseen corridor the priests once used. The ritual channel. The conduit between the dead and the living. The heart. Wasn't physically inside me. It was metaphysically inside me. "I don't want this," I whispered. The presence leaned closer, not with touch, but with gravity. Like the world bent toward me. Desire is irrelevant. The sand beneath my feet began to shift, forming a faint spiral around me. A slow curling pattern that mirrored the one found beneath Hassan's lifeless body back at the camp. No wind touched it. It moved on its own. I inhaled sharply. "What do you expect me to do?" A pause. Then, "Carry us." The sand spiraled faster, spinning in a perfect circle. My shadow stretched upward. The crack glowed brighter. Blue light flickered like distant lightning against the dunes. My heart hammered violently. "Carry you where?" I asked. The answer struck like cold iron, to the place we were denied. I felt the world tilt. The place. Not the tomb. Not the valley. Not Egypt. A memory surfaced, something I had seen in the inscriptions, but ignored. A symbol repeated on the walls, not of the burial chamber, but on the outer shrine. A symbol of two worlds. This one. And another. A land beyond Egypt's borders. Beyond the Nile, beyond the realm of the living, a forbidden realm the priests feared more than any curse. My voice cracked. "You want me to take you?" "Out of here." The wind stopped. The desert froze. My shadow brightened, the crack blazing like a narrow wound. "Yes," shook my head violently. "I won't do it. I'm not your vessel." Silence. Then, "You already are." The breath tore from my lungs. I fell to my knees, gripping the sand as the pulse inside my chest became unbearable, a pounding force. Like another heart beating beside mine, synced but separate. The sand beneath me cracked. A thin blue line crawled outward from where I knelt, branching like veins across the dune. I gasped, clutching my chest. "No dash, no dash, no dash, no dash." "Stop the presence," whispered. "You opened the door." My spine arched painfully. "You broke the seal." My vision blurred. "You freed the heart." Tears rushed down my face. "Please," I whispered. "Please let me go." The wind answered coldly. "You are the path now," I sobbed. The blue fissure beneath me widened. The sand trembled. My shadow elongated unnaturally, stretching far across the dunes, bending into shapes that weren't mine. The curse was no longer chasing me. It was growing inside. Me, the Pharaoh's essence, fragmented but alive, was knitting itself into my shadow. My pulse, the gray space between breath and silence. I forced myself up, stumbling like a drunk, wiping my eyes with trembling hands. "I won't finish this," I choked. "I won't carry you anywhere." The presence paused, just a heartbeat, just long enough to let hope flicker, then crushed it. "You misunderstand." A cold pressure wrapped around my spine, climbing upward like invisible fingers. "You do not finish the path." The pressure tightened. "The path finishes. You." The ground cracked wide. Beneath my feet, a blast of blue light surged. Upward, my shadow swallowed me, whole, and the desert disappeared. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. And for a moment, there was no sand beneath me, no sky above me, no wind, no sun, no world. Just falling endless, weightless falling through a darkness that felt thick enough to drown in. I tried to scream, but the sound collapsed inside my throat, swallowed before it even formed. My limbs flailed, but I couldn't feel them. It was as if my body had been peeled away, leaving only the raw shape of fear tumbling through nothing. Then, A light appeared far below me, not warm, not bright. Blue dot, the same blue as the fissure on the Pharaoh's skull, the same blue as the stone, the same blue that had burned through my shadow. It grew larger, closer, hungrier. I braced for impact, but I didn't hit it. I slid into it, the world snapped back around me. Violent and sudden, like someone rebuilding reality piece by piece around my collapsing mind. Stone walls surged upward. Air crashed into my lungs. My knees struck solid ground. I was inside a chamber, not the tomb. Not a place I recognized. Older, much older. The walls were covered in carvings I'd never seen before. Not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not anything human hands were meant to understand. Symbols twisted in ways that defied geometry. Lines bent inward as if the stone refused to obey the rules of shape. Some of the carvings were moving slowly, subtly, like they were breathing. The chamber pulsed faintly with blue light. I pushed myself to my feet, breath ragged, chest burning. Where am I? The answer wasn't spoken. It formed inside my mind like a memory that wasn't mine. Where we began, my pulse stumbled. We. I whispered. The blue glow intensified, seeping from the cracks in the chamber walls, swirling like mist around the floor. In the center of the room, shapes began to rise, silhouettes, half-formed, flickering like dying flames. But one shape rose taller, stronger, more defined, the cracked head, the hollow chest. The ancient presence, the Pharaoh of the dead, not sealed now, not weakened. Here, in this place, his presence was overwhelming. This was not the mortal world. This was somewhere beneath it, a tether point, a spiritual fault line, a place older than Egypt, older than humanity. He stepped toward me, and the entire chamber bent around his movement, as if reality itself was bowing to him. My voice broke. I sealed you. I finished the ritual. I watched you fall. He didn't speak with his mouth. He didn't need to. His presence pressed directly against my thoughts. You sealed one body. The chamber darkened, not the soul. I staggered back until my spine hit the wall. The carvings beneath my hands moved again, shifting into new patterns, forming a shape I didn't understand at first. A human figure, bent, kneeling, hands extended, offering something. Then the symbol changed, shifting to a second figure towering over the first, cracked down the center. My chest tightened. The symbol was me. And him. We're connected, I whispered. Because of the stone, because I touched it, because you awakened what you could not understand. Blue energy spiraled around his form, because you opened the path with your living shadow. Behind him, the chamber walls shifted again, showing visions carved in glowing light. A desert storm. A hidden city swallowed by sand. Priests carving runes into stone with trembling hands. A ritual circle glowing like a dying star. A sarcophagus being sealed with chains of light. Then, a figure stepping into the circle. A living figure, offering their shadow as the final key. My breath stopped. No, that wasn't me. I didn't choose. The Pharaoh moved closer. Every step he took made the chamber flicker. You opened the door. The walls shook. You became the path. The floor cracked beneath me. Now, you will finish the journey. Energy surged toward me like a wave, wrapping around my legs, rising to my chest, tightening like coils. I tried to fight, pushing against the cold force building inside me. But it was useless. The pressure was crushing. Inevitable, my shadow stretched beneath me, writhing, twisting into shapes I didn't recognize. The crack down its head split wider, the blue light spilling out with each trembling pulse. I screamed not from pain, but from the feeling of something ancient sliding into the hollow spaces inside me, filling them, imprinting itself like a brand on my soul. No. Stop, but the Pharaoh drowned my voice. We are bound. We are unfinished. You will walk where I cannot. My vision blurred violently. The chamber spun. The walls melted into darkness. You will carry the rest of me back into the world. I fell. Not backward. Not forward. I fell through the world. Fell until the darkness thinned. Fell until air returned. Fell until sand clung to my skin. My eyes snapped open. I was back in the desert. On my knees, gasping, shaking, sweating as if I'd crawled through fire. The city glowed faintly on the horizon. The cliffs were far behind. The sun was rising again, but it didn't feel warm. It felt cautious, afraid. My hands trembled violently as I pushed myself. Upright, my shadow rose with me, but it didn't stand the way I stood. It stood taller, straighter, a crack glowing through its head, a faint blue pulse beating in perfect rhythm. With the one inside my chest, my breath shattered. No. No, please. No. My shadow leaned slightly, like it was listening to something. Then it straightened and whispered with a voice that wasn't human. We begin. And when my shadow whispered, "We begin," something inside me collapsed. Not like breaking, but like surrender. A hollow space opened in my chest, deep and cold. And for a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even stand. The desert, the horizon, the rising sun, everything seemed distant, blurred by the simple terror of that one word. Begin what? Begin how? Begin where? My shadow moved before I did. Its head turned slightly, as if scanning the horizon, searching the air for signals only it could hear. The crack across its skull glowed faintly, pulsing like a slow heartbeat with a rhythm older than human memory. I forced my hand to move. My fingers twitched. My muscles trembled. But when I lifted my arm, my shadow didn't lift with it. It remained still, unconnected, Ectoreth alive. My breath hitched. I held my palm in front of my face, shaking violently, and watched as my shadow stood motionless. No longer mirroring me, but watching me, observing. Deciding, the pulse in my chest throbbed again, harder this time, and my shadow flinched in perfect sync. A soft glow rippled down its length. I whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." The shadow tilted its cracked head, as if amused. A faint voice drifted through my thoughts, smooth and ancient, and impossibly calm. "You are the doorway." I shook my head hard, stumbling backward until sand filled my shoes. "No. You're sealed. You're finished." I closed the circle. This isn't supposed to happen. The wind curled around me, warm and cold at once, swirling my words into nothing. Then the voice returned. One circle closes. Another opens. My knees almost gave out. I whispered, "What circle?" The shadow flickered, then pointed. Not toward the tomb, not toward the valley, but toward the distant horizon where the sun hit the desert in a faint line of gold. Toward something far beyond. Egypt. Something old. Something buried. Something calling. A memory slipped into my mind, not mine, but ancient, heavy, carved in stone. The priests had bound the Pharaoh beneath the boy king. But he had not originated there. He came from somewhere else, a land beyond the Nile, beyond the desert, beyond the reach of pharaohs and gods, a forgotten kingdom erased before. Egypt's first dynasty, and I through the stone. The ritual, the crack in my shadow, had become the path back to it. My voice cracked. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not taking you anywhere." The shadow straightened slowly, its head tilting back. As if inhaling the rising sun, the cracked fissure down the center of its skull glowed. "Brighter dot," the voice pressed softly into my mind. You do not choose the path. The sand beneath my feet trembled, not violently. Not enough to knock me over, but with a steady pulse. A heartbeat matching my own. I dropped to one knee, grabbing the ground, fingers sinking into the hot sand. My heart raced, pushing against my chest like it wanted to break free. My shadow flickered wildly, glitching, splitting, reforming. Something inside me shifted, not physically, spiritually, like a door inside my soul had begun to open. No, please, stop. The whisper responded. You awakened us. The sand rose in thin spirals around me. You carry us. The air thickened. You will return us. I clutched my head, nails digging into my scalp. Return you where? A long silence. So long, I thought the presence had vanished. Then, softly, home. The word shook me more than any roar or curse or apparition. Because that word didn't feel threatening, it felt longing, like something ancient had been trapped for millennia, begging to return to the place it had been stolen from. The shadow stepped forward, not toward me, past me, toward the horizon, toward whatever home meant for something older than Egypt, older than kings, older than every story humanity had ever carved into stone. I shouted, "Stop!" My shadow froze. Then it turned, slowly, the crack glowing deeper and deeper until it was almost blinding, in a voice that carried no anger, no hunger, only inevitability. It said, "We leave at dusk." My entire body shook. "No, please. I can't. You can." The shadow extended its arm, and my feet slid forward across the sand. Not by my choice, by its pull. My voice broke into a terrified whisper. "Where are we going?" The desert wind, suddenly cold, carried the answer like a memory long buried beneath the world. To the kingdom before death. Asterisk, 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 and when those words slid through the desert wind, the kingdom before death, something inside me turned hollow, as if the meaning itself had carved space out of my soul. My heartbeat stuttered. My vision blurred at the edges. The desert seemed to pull back from me, like even the sand didn't want to be too close to what I had just heard. The kingdom before death. A place older than pyramids, older than Sumer, older than the idea of kings. A place that came before dying meant what it means now. My legs buckled. I fell to the sand. My breathing tore from my chest in uneven gasps. "Why? Why me?" I whispered, voice shaking so badly the words almost didn't form. Why did it have to be me? The wind stirred softly, brushing against my skin like cold fingertips. My shadow shifted. The crack pulsed gently, almost soothing. A whisper answered, "Because you listened." The simplicity of that answer terrified me more than anything else. Because it was true. I had listened. I had followed. I had opened the tomb. I had touched the stone. I had awakened what was meant to stay sleeping, and now, whatever had been sealed for thousands of years was using my shadow. As its doorway, my body trembled violently. "I'm not strong enough for this," I whispered. The voice replied, calm and ancient. "Strength is not required. Only presence." Presence. Just being alive was enough for them to move through me. I pressed my palms into the sand, grounding myself, trying to stop my lungs from collapsing. The heat of the desert was rising, but it couldn't melt the cold blooming inside my ribs. I forced myself to stand. It felt wrong. Like something under my skin was standing with me. Inside me, my shadow rose too taller, smoother, less human with every passing second. "Home," I whispered. "Where is it? Where are you trying to go?" For the first time, the presence hesitated. The wind stilled. The desert waited then. Beneath the first sands, I frowned through the fear. What sands? My shadow's cracked head rotated slightly. The horizon shimmered. And suddenly, I wasn't seeing the desert anymore. I saw a storm. A violent one. Sand tearing through the air like shards of bone. Lightning ripping across a black sky. Ancient towers collapsing under tidal waves of sand. Figures in robes running, chanting, sealing something beneath the earth. A city swallowed whole. Then darkness. Then silence. Then a name, whispered from a place older than language. Jaru. I stumbled backward. That word, I'd heard it somewhere. Not in our discovery. Not in modern books, it was an ancient, forbidden name. Jaru, the lost fortress. The desert gate. The place priests swore never to speak of. You want to go there? I whispered. My shadow didn't nod. Didn't speak. It didn't need to. The crack glowed brighter. A pulse traveled through my chest, down my spine, into the ground, and the desert answered. A thin line of sand rose, swirling like a living thread, forming a path toward the eastern horizon. The line shimmered faintly with blue light, barely visible to the living eye. I stared at it, horrified. No, I can't. I'm not going anywhere with you. The presence pressed closer, not touching me, but filling the space around me. Inside me, you already walked the path. I stepped back. The shadow stepped forward. Dusk, it reminded me. I clenched my fists. And if I refuse? The desert darkened just slightly. One brief exhale, one cloud passing over the sun. One shift in the light that made the world feel thinner. The answer came softly, soft enough to break me. Then we take you without your body. My throat closed. A tremor ran up my spine. Not fear, not cold. A pull, a gentle pull toward the shimmering line in the sand, the path leading to the buried kingdom, the pre-death realm. The place where the Pharaoh had once walked before humanity carved its first god into stone. I forced myself to breathe. Forced myself to stay upright. Forced myself to remember that I was still alive. For now, I won't let you turn me into a vessel, I whispered. I'll fight it. My shadow flickered. You already lost that fight. And the pulse inside my chest hammered so violently I collapsed again, clutching the ground, gasping as something ancient pressed against my soul like a hand trying to drag it out. I screamed, not in pain. In terror, and somewhere, faint and distant, like a sound carried across centuries. I heard drums, slow, rhythmic, calling me. Calling us. Calling the path home, my shadow extended its hand, and far away, in a place older than the pyramids, something woke up. And when those words slid through the desert wind, the kingdom before death, something inside me turned hollow, as if the meaning itself had carved space out of my soul. My heartbeat stuttered. My vision blurred at the edges. The desert seemed to pull back from me, like even the sand didn't want to be too close to what I had just heard. The kingdom before death. A place older than pyramids, older than Sumer, older than the idea of kings. A place that came before dying meant what it means now. My legs buckled. I fell to the sand. My breathing tore from my chest in uneven gasps. Why? Why me? I whispered, voice shaking so badly the words almost didn't form. Why did it have to be me? The wind stirred softly, brushing against my skin like cold fingertips. My shadow shifted. The crack pulsed gently, almost. Soothing, a whisper answered, because you listened. The simplicity of that answer terrified me more than anything else, because it was true. I had listened. I had followed. I had opened the tomb. I had touched the stone. I had awakened what was meant to stay sleeping, and now, whatever had been sealed for thousands of years was using my shadow. As its doorway, my body trembled violently. I'm not strong enough for this, I whispered. The voice replied, calm and ancient, strength is not required. only presence. Presence. Just being alive was enough for them to move through me. I pressed my palms into the sand, grounding myself, trying to stop my lungs from collapsing. The heat of the desert was rising, but it couldn't melt the cold blooming inside my ribs. I forced myself to stand. It felt wrong. Like something under my skin was standing with me. Inside me, my shadow rose too taller, smoother, less human with every passing second. Home, I whispered. Where is it? Where are you trying to go? For the first time, the presence hesitated. The wind stilled. The desert waited then, beneath the first sands. I frowned through the fear. What sands? My shadow's cracked head rotated slightly. The horizon shimmered. And suddenly, I wasn't seeing the desert anymore. I saw a storm. A violent one. Sand tearing through the air like shards of bone. Lightning ripping across a black sky. Ancient towers collapsing under tidal waves of sand. Figures in robes running, chanting, sealing something beneath the earth. A city swallowed whole. Then darkness, then silence, then a name whispered from a place older than language. Jaru. I stumbled backward. That word, I'd heard it somewhere. Not in our discovery. Not in modern books. It was an ancient forbidden name. Jaru, the lost fortress. The desert gate. The place priests swore never to speak of. You want to go there? I whispered. My shadow didn't nod. Didn't speak. It didn't need to. The crack glowed brighter. A pulse traveled through my chest, down my spine, into the ground, and the desert answered. A thin line of sand rose, swirling like a living thread, forming a path toward the eastern horizon. The line shimmered faintly with blue light, barely visible to the living eye. I stared at it, horrified. No, I can't. I'm not going anywhere with you. The presence pressed closer, not touching me, but filling the space around me. Inside me, you already walked the path. I stepped back. The shadow stepped forward. Dusk, it reminded me. I clenched my fists. And if I refuse? The desert darkened just slightly. One brief exhale, one cloud passing over the sun. One shift in the light that made the world feel thinner. The answer came softly, soft enough to break me. Then we take you without your body. My throat closed. A tremor ran up my spine. Not fear, not cold. A pull, a gentle pull toward the shimmering line in the sand, the path leading to the buried kingdom, the pre-death realm. The place where the Pharaoh had once walked before humanity carved its first god into stone. I forced myself to breathe. Forced myself to stay upright. Forced myself to remember that I was still alive. For now, I won't let you turn me into a vessel, I whispered. I'll fight it. My shadow flickered. You already lost that fight. And the pulse inside my chest hammered so violently, I collapsed again, clutching the ground, gasping as something ancient pressed against my soul like a hand trying to drag it out. I screamed, not in pain, in terror, and somewhere, faint and distant, like a sound carried across centuries. I heard drums, slow, rhythmic, calling me, calling us, calling the path home. My shadow extended its hand, and far away, in a place older than the pyramids. Something woke up. Asterisk, 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 and the instant that sound reached me, those distant, rhythmic, ancient drums, something inside my spine tightened like a rope yanked by an invisible hand. It wasn't just a sound. It was a summons. A call older than the pyramids, older than the Nile, older than the first word humans ever carved into clay. The drums echoed again, slow, deep, bone-shaking. Each beat landed in my chest, like a second heartbeat overlapping my own. My hands dug into the sand. My breath came in shattered bursts. My vision blurred as the horizon trembled like heat rising off stone. Except the sun was nowhere near hot enough for that. The shimmering path of sand glowed. Brighter, my shadow's cracked head tilted upward, as if listening to the drums with something deeper than ears. I whispered, voice shaking, "Stop. Please stop." But the drums only grew louder, not with distance, but with recognition. Like they were aware I was awake, aware I could hear, aware the path had found its carrier. My shadow turned toward me, slow, deliberate. Its arms hung unnaturally long at its sides, fingers stretched thin like blades of darkness. The crack down its skull pulsed with blue light that throbbed in perfect sync with the drums. One beat. The crack glowed. Another beat. The ground vibrated. A third beat. The air dimmed. "Please," I whispered, crawling backward, sand sticking to my palms. "I'm not going with you. I'm not finishing anything." My shadow took one step toward me. One, it didn't need more. The sand around me collapsed inward, creating a shallow crater like the earth itself was bowing to it. A harsh breath tore from my lungs. "No, no, no, come closer." But my shadow stopped. Not because it chose to, but because something else stopped it. The drums halted. The world froze. The wind died. My shadow lifted its head, listening. Then I heard something new, not drums this time, but a chorus of whispers, thousands layered upon thousands. Echoing through the desert-like wind, through broken stone, the voices whispered one word: return. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound came from inside my skull. "Stop!" I screamed. The voices ignored me. "Return?" My shadow straightened. "Return." The sand spiraled again, faster, gathering around my legs like hands gripping my tails. My ankles return. The ground cracked beneath me, a thin blue line, a fissure like the one inside. The tomb opened under my knees. My stomach twisted. Violently, Dotto quotes, "No dash, no dash, no don't take me." My shadow leaned closer, not attacking, not dragging, not commanding, but witnessing. A guardian, a watcher, an usher. The blue fissure widened another inch. The voices grew louder. "Return." I choked on my breath. "Return where?" The answer came in a wave of cold that slammed into my back where the first Pharaoh fell. My blood turned to ice. The first Pharaoh. Not Narmer. Not Manes. Not the kings from schoolbooks or carved on temple walls. The first beyond recorded history. The one erased from scripture. The king before the kings. The one the boy king's tomb was meant to hide. My lungs squeezed. My fingers clawed at the sand. "I can't go there," I whispered. "I won't survive." The wind curled around me, speaking with the calm certainty of an ancient truth. "You will not survive if you refuse." My shadow bent down, almost kneeling, as if watching me break was part of the path. I pushed myself up on shaking arms, fighting the pull of the fissure beneath me. "I don't want this," I whispered. My shadow's crack glowed brighter. The wind whispered, "Want is for the living." My heart stopped for a beat. "You are saying I'm—" The presence finished the sentence for me. Between, chill ran through my spine. I wasn't dead. But I wasn't only alive. I was between, a vessel, a path, a bridge between the sealed Pharaoh and the world he'd been denied. The drums resumed in the distance, louder now, more urgent. The fissure beneath me widened again. I screamed and scrambled backward, sand cutting my skin as I escaped the opening. My shadow shifted with me, following but not touching. The presence whispered, "Dusk." I shook my head. "I won't go with you at dusk. I won't take another step toward your kingdom." Silence followed. Then, "You misunderstand." A cold wind wrapped around my throat. At dusk, we walk with or without you. Staggered. Why me? Why me? The reply came as soft as a dying breath, because only the living can carry the dead home. My knees gave out. I collapsed in the sand, chest heaving, eyes burning with tears. The path shimmered ahead. The drums echoed behind. My shadow pulsed beside me, and for the first time since the tomb, since the guardian, since the Pharaoh's roar, I understood my fate. I wasn't chosen, I was needed, and dusk was coming.